In this tutorial for After Effects, we're going to start with this Illustrator file and take it into After Effects and then animate it within. So the file consists of two groups. There's a background layer, it is just a coloured rectangle, and then there's the lion layer. The line consists of loads of shapes, different colours, all put together in one group. So we have a lion group and a background group. And then I'm going to save this as an Illustrator file. So you will need this file, it's in the assets pack. You'll need this for the After Effects tutorial. Next I'm going to open After Effects. And choose a new project. So there are different ways I can import my footage into this. I'm just going to choose this one, create a new composition from one or more imported footage files, because that will set up my sizing, especially from the Illustrator file. It will match the size that I'm bringing in. Choose the file there, Blue Lion, and where it says import as, I want to import as a composition and retain the layer sizes. So I want it to keep the proportion of the lion to the background the same, and I want it to bring everything in as a layer. I'm going to choose that and then open. So now within After Effects I have that in my project window. I can just drop the arrow here and I can see that I've got the two pieces. I've got the background and I've got the lion, and I've got a layer here that shows the footage. I'm just going to have a look at the After Effects workspace now. So if we come up to the top bar, the menu bar, it looks very like Premiere Pro. If we just go to Window, we can choose a workspace, and I'm looking at the small screen workspace because I'm working on a laptop. There are lots of other options, but if you're working on a laptop, this is the one for you. So let's select small screen, and that's giving me my project panel, which is very similar to Premiere Pro. Double click on it and you can import a file. My composition window here, and we'll come back to that. Menu bar at the top, a toolbar in the row underneath, some other options here. We've got an effects and presets and information panel here, and then down here across the whole bottom of the screen we've got a timeline. The first thing I'm going to do is import my background layer onto the timeline. So I'm just going to left click it and drag it in. You'll notice that unlike Premiere, the timeline scrolls across the whole of the bottom here. If I drop down the little arrow at the beginning, you'll see that all the effect controls that you would normally see in Premiere, you would see up here in the left corner. They're all attached here to this arrow, so you drop them down because it layers up. But from left to right in the timeline, we have the time at which the playhead is. So here's the playhead, there's the current time. Some extra bits that we'll look at another time. We've got a hide button, so click on the little eye to turn things off and on. You could click on the audio button here if there was audio attached to your track to turn that off and on. We have a spot button here which just solos whichever piece of footage you're looking at. So if you've got 10 pieces of footage there, you can just choose one with the spot. We've got a lock, so you can lock the footage. You can choose a colour for your layer, the name of the layer, a series of options here that we will look at later, the blend modes, track matte, which is the same as we did in Premiere Pro last week, or the week before. Parent and link will come back to. And then the timeline just runs across here from left to right. So next I'm going to drag my lion in, but I want it on top of the background layer because this works in the same way as Photoshop, everything's layered up. So there's my lion. I can choose how big the screen is here, or I can scroll in and out. So I need to select the layer that I'm going to work on, so I can do that either by clicking in here on the timeline, or I can click on the composition window itself. I can animate this in the same way that I animated things in Premiere Pro, but instead of using the effect controls in the panel to the left, I use them in this drop down menu here. So I can drop down the transform key. I can choose the position for the lion, so I could start him here and animate that using a stopwatch, and come across here, put him in his finishing position, and just like Premiere, it will add in the keyframe there. And if I press the spacebar to play, it will just animate smoothly across there for me. And in the same way, I can animate scale and rotation and opacity. Animate the rotation, and by the end I want him to have spun round. So that is the basics of After Effects. Everything works with keyframes in the same way as Premiere Pro, but the keyframes are found here underneath the layer panel rather than in the effect controls. I'm just going to delete those now, so if I just click on the individual keyframes, I can delete them, or I can draw a box around them and just delete, or I could reset here. I'm going to look at some of the ready-made effects within After Effects. So if I drop down the Effects and Presets button here, there are a whole load of ready done animation presets, which do you could program all these via the options here, by the parameters here, but actually it's a long and slow process keyframing everything, so there are some ready-made animations in here for you. If I drop down behaviors, I can just choose from in here, so double click to apply it, and that's just giving me a rolling scroll of lines, and the parameters for that now come up in the effect controls panel on the left. So I can change the speed, I can reverse the speed, and I can change the spacing and the size and the offset. So I can layer these effects as well, so I can choose something else and add that on top. And if I want to delete them, I can just select them in the effect controls here and delete on the keyboard. Get rid of them. I'm just going to turn off visibility for the lion and add a text layer. Texts come from the toolbar up here. I've got shapes, pens, brushes, and the text. Choose type tool. The parameters come up over here on the right under character, and you can choose a font in the same way as you would in any Adobe software. You can resize, choose the spacing and everything else that you'd expect to be able to choose. And if I click over here, I can type. And I can take the selection tool arrow here and use that to drag it around. I can resize it, scale it in and out, flip it. I can drop down the menu here and I could rotate it. And I can look in the text menu here and make more sort of changes in here, so I can animate it from here. I can also animate it with preset effects, so back into animation presets. And in here there's a group of text settings. And I can just choose from there. And that adds in down here in the effects parameters as well. So there's the spiral that I've added in. There's the keyframes, so I can adjust those there. I can slow it down, speed it up. I can change the number of rotations and the fade in and the transform. So I've got a lot of control even over these preset things. I have a lot of control over what I do with it. I'm just going to add some various text layers. I right click on the type tool, I can choose a vertical type tool and that gives me a vertical set of text. When you're ready to export, there are various options. You can return back to Premiere Pro to export as a H.264, and we will look at dynamic link in a later video and how to do that. If you're exporting in After Effects, you need to go to File, Export, add to the render queue. That will bring up the render queue window, and in here After Effects no longer exports directly as a H.264, which is the file we're using for YouTube and video and so on. So we need to take it into Adobe Media Encoder, so Q in AME. So this will open Adobe Media Encoder. It may take a while. Media Encoder allows you to export directly as an MP4, which would be the H.264 coding. If that's not showing here in this box, you can just click on the arrow next to it, go down, select the setting you want, which for us is H.264. Check the output file, because you need to know where it's going, so mine's going to the desktop to a folder called background, and press start. As it's encoding, you'll get an output preview down here. And there's my MP4. You can output without coding by choosing Format QuickTime and then OK, and then Render, but that won't give you a compressed file that you can upload to YouTube or to your blog.